The MMA fortune teller.
The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller. The teller.
What's up, you guys? The Ultimate Fighter Season 29, Episode 3 recap. I would like to say this last episode was a little bit more exciting than the prior, because a lot of people were hating on Episode 2 as far as the fight went and whatnot. Wasn't much better here. I'll give you guys a little sneak peek if you missed the episode. Wasn't much better. I will say this much, though. I was pretty impressed with the victor, who we'll be talking about here in a second. And I definitely want to clear up some things, too. I think I was calling him Tresean Gore. Treason as in, the crime of betraying one's country, especially by attempting to kill the sovereign or overthrow the government. No, his name is not Treason. It's Tresean. So I do apologize. I think I may have said that. But this week's episode, what was a fight of Tresean Gore and Ryder Newman. And the reason why I'm going into depth on how to pronounce his name, not that it's that hard of a name, it was just a mental slip, but this guy is impressive on the feet. This guy has some nasty striking, seems to have some good takedown defense, although Ryder Newman he didn't really press the takedown. Tried a couple times. He was really shooting from out far, was really reaching for his takedowns, wasn't setting them up properly. You could definitely tell that he wasn't there mentally, and he admitted it after the fight. He just was basically almost intimidated of Gore striking and just didn't want to engage. I really feel he dropped the ball there in that fight. I would have liked to have seen that fight actually, turn up. I would like to see the volume turned up in that fight, to see the heat turned up. Not saying the fight would have turned out any different way, because if Ryder Newman would have stepped it up, I think that Gore may have put him out. His striking was nasty. It was he was mixing things up. I like the way he was switching stances, throwing beautiful leg kicks. He set the tone right away with the leg kicks. Not to say that things would have turned out differently, but in Ryder Newman's case, you're losing the fight. You got to change some things up, man. You really got to just start to make it a brawl, and then try to maybe mix in the takedowns in the middle of the octagon, not so much by the cage where he can just post up against the cage, use the wizard and stuff your takedown, and then just start piecing you up again once again on the feet. So, this was the fight here. Now, remember so just to keep track of what's going on here, Team Ortega already won week 1 and week 2, with Andre Petroski winning week 1 and Ludovic Shalinian winning last week's episode as a slight underdog too. And in that episode, he defeated Mitch Rapasso, who, just to give you guys an idea how this episode kicked off, Mitch Rapasso, I don't know how you guys feel about this. He was a little bit upset about how he lost that fight. He feels he is the better fighter, and he thinks it just wasn't his day that day, and he was kind of chirping about it. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It's good to see that he has confidence. I think that, you lost the fight. I guess, don't make too much of a scene about it. But, if you feel you're the better fighter, you'll have your time moving forward, in the near future. Just keep grinding, keep training. We'll see if you really are the better fighter. Stick to the grind, and let's see how things play out in the near future. But I know some people were not really feeling his energy there, complaining and talking a little bit of crap or whatnot. But I think there's more to come from Mitch Rapasso, so stay tuned throughout this season. Or if not, once the Ultimate Fighter season finale happens and we start to see these guys get opportunities inside the octagon in an actual legit event for the UFC, we will be seeing more from Mitch Rapasso. But again, so Team Volkanovski is down 2-0 going into this week's episode. Again, so this is the middleweight fight. Ryder Newman was the TUF wrestler, the two-time, was he not a state champ? I think he was a national champ in high school as far for his wrestling. This guy is, the real deal, supposedly. He's comes from a real pedigree with his wrestling and whatnot. His resume was 3-1, I think, going into this fight, whereas Tresean's was 3-0, so not a lot of experience from either of these guys. Now, once the fight, at the weigh-ins, another thing too, once the weigh-ins were taking place and whatnot, and the night before the fight, I liked Tresean Gore's energy. He was really kind of getting in Ryder Newman's head, as we saw, as he admitted after the fight. Tresean Gore was just chirping, and he was keeping it cordial. He was being friendly, but he was letting him know it's his time. He's winning this fight, basically. That's what I got from it. He kept staring Ryder down and saying how, he's going to bring it, and he ain't going to lose. He ain't here just to be in the UFC and get a contract. He's here to be great. I love the energy Tresean Gore was bringing. Tresean Gore came from a tough upbringing. Seemed that he didn't have his father in his life. I think he went to juvenile a little bit, this and that, and he had a tough upbringing. Came out of jail or juvenile at one time. Found an MMA gym over in Georgia. I think it was actually an ATT Georgia, American Top Team Georgia, that he got into, which is a legit camp, a legit facility over there, and obviously they've been doing their thing with him because he looked to be very talented in this fight. Ryder Newman, a funny guy, seems like a cool guy, a guy that maybe needs to get a little bit more serious. I don't know. But a guy that, he was talking about drinking and party and this and that. And, lives in Vegas, but he's definitely doing his thing. He owns his own business, a cleaning business. So you got to respect the hustle from this guy. And just some other things before we go into the actual fight, before we get into it a little bit more. So Ryder Newman, let me pull this up real quick. Ryder Newman, I believe he puts in a lot of time at Extreme Couture. And Ryder Newman's teammate over there, or a guy he spent a lot of time with on the mats, Miles Hunsinger. On the episode, they talk a little bit about it. Tresean Gore is asking him some questions. This guy, Miles, was cool about stuff. He didn't really talk too much. He tried to give Tresean some looks and whatnot, of course, helping him train as a teammate, but didn't really go into depth too much with little advice. Because you learn certain things when you train with someone for an extensive period of time, and there are certain things you can tell an opponent that could really help them out. And I don't think that was necessarily the case. So that was cool for Miles. He kind of just kept it professional there. And one other thing too, keep an eye on this guy. I like this guy, Brian Battle. This guy seems like a really, really cool guy. From starting to watch the show, I'm starting to root for him more than any of the other guys. I'm starting to gravitate towards this guy. I like this guy, Brian Battle. Seems like a guy that I would get along with probably most on the show. And he was really supporting Ryder throughout the show, and he was talking about how they would be, wreaking havoc if they were going to college together back in the day, this and that. Just seems like a cool dude. Could be one of my boys. So I'm excited to see Brian Battle throw down, and he's in the middleweight division. Brian Battle, 5-1 as a professional. We'll probably be seeing him fight in the near future, obviously. All right, so this fight, Ryder Newman was very inactive in this fight. He was on the back foot. Tresean Gore was pressing him, looked to be way more crisp, throwing nasty leg kicks right from the get-go, setting things off. Ryder Newman was throwing a couple shots like this, just overhand rights that were telegraphed. Tresean was blocking them very well, and then would just move forward, throw a nice crisp jab, and just keep working the kicks. He was switching his stances, throwing head kicks, mixing things up. Just looked very, very sharp with the striking. I think this guy is a legit striker. I could definitely see this guy being a legit striker in the division, in the UFC. I want to see some more things. I want to see things unravel with his overall game. I want to see his grappling. I want to see him tested in different ways. Of course, he's so green, but I was very, very impressed with the striking. And he put a clinic, and he won the first 2 rounds. There was no need to go to a third round. And Tresean Gore, he moves on. He moves on through the tournament now. So that now puts Team Ortega 3-0 against Volkanovski. Now, of course, you see, Ludovic winning his fight, Tresean Gore winning his fight, and Andre Petroski winning his fight. So is Volkanovski going to win anything? That will lead me to this upcoming episode the next week. It's going to be Dustin Lampros taking on the very tough Vince Murdock, a guy that we've seen fight on Dana White's Contender Series. I don't know if you can see him here. That's Vince Murdock. This is Dustin Lampros here. The reason why I transitioned to that is because I think this is a really good opportunity for Team Volkanovski to get a W here. Dustin Lampros is 5-0. Seems like he's a very talented fighter. He's finishing a lot of his fights. He's had some tough fights even as an amateur, fighting some legit dudes in there. Take a look at his resume. Like I said, 5-0, only 27 years old, cruising into the prime of his career, finishing all these dudes. And it's diverse too. He's pulling off guillotines, finishing guys on the feet with the strikes. I know he didn't win this fight, but Taiwan Claxton's a very talented opponent, so it's good to see that he's, rubbing shoulders in the cage with tough dudes. You don't want to see him fighting a bunch of padded dudes. And as a professional, that seems like it's been the case for the most part. 5-10 was his last opponent. 0-0, 0-4, 6-14. But he had that fight against Taiwan Claxton, who at the time Taiwan was, I believe he was 2-0. He was undefeated as an amateur, but still, Taiwan had a lot of wrestling credentials and whatnot that he brought into the MMA game when he stepped over. So Went to decision with him. Now, this is going to be a big step up in competition, but I think that Lampros will be able to handle business here. I'm going to edge Lampros. I like what I've seen from him on tape. I talked to him on Instagram a little bit back in the day when COVID was all starting. I remember we DM'd a little bit because I know he does a lot of work with MMA Island. I believe MMA Island is sponsored or vice versa. Lampros is sponsored by MMA Island or vice versa. I know those guys work together, and I like both of them. I love the channel MMA Island. You guys check them out as well. They're on Instagram and cool people over there. So, this is a guy also, Dustin Lampros, I believe his cousin commented here in the comment section a couple weeks ago. So seemed like she was a very cool person, and I'm rooting on her relative here. Also, Dustin has some Greek heritage in his bloodline, so do I. So there's a lot of reasons for me to root on Dustin here. But I genuinely think that he should get the job done here. I think that he does show to have some good promise, man. This guy's a nasty striker. He's well-rounded. He's getting in work with some of the best of them. I mean, you look at the guys. I mean, you check out his Instagram. He's over at American Top Team. I think he's mostly over at Sanford MMA too, I believe. So I mean, he's bouncing around all over here in South Florida. And you guys know how high I am on Henry Hooft. I say it every single time. I think he's just one of the nastiest striking coaches in all of MMA. Who is this? Robin Vance. Let me say this one more time, man. I used to watch this guy back in the day. How can I not pronounce his name? Robin van Roosmalen, one of the nastiest kickboxers in the game, who came over to MMA. I don't know exactly what's going on with his career as far as MMA goes. He's 2-0 as a professional. Seems like he put that on hold. But it's great to see that Dustin's getting in training with guys like that. One of the nastiest strikers on planet Earth. So, again, the point I'm making here is that Lampros is hanging around the right crowd. I don't know if this guy's the right crowd. I guess he is. He's a cool dude. Supreme Patty. He's down over here in the area too. So, yeah, I mean, Vince Murdock, on the other hand, a Team Alpha male product, a guy that had a big opportunity on Dana White's Contender Series, took on Luis Saldana. Luis Saldana was the much larger opponent in there that night or that day, and Luis Saldana was a fighter. Is a fighter that since fought in the UFC. Really stole a victory, actually. Just touch upon that real quick. He lost to Jordan Griffin, but he was able to pull that off. The judges gave it to him. I don't know why. Now he has a fight coming up with Austin Lingo. But I will say this, even though he should have lost that fight, he is a very talented striker, so no real shame in Vince losing that fight. Vince was undersized. Vince should have been fighting at a division less than that fight. That fight took place at featherweight. So he was completely undersized in there. You got to love the heart that he had. He tried to hang tough in that fight. It was just a little bit too much for him. He's 30 years old now. And this is a fight that should play out to be a very exciting fight. I'm excited for this fight. We're due for an exciting fight on this show, right? Last two fights really haven't been nothing to go crazy about. I think that this is the fight where things really start to escalate. Dustin Lampros will be looking to get the finish in there. Vince Murdock is very technical and very tough, and he'll hold his own. But I'm going with Dustin Lampros to win this fight. If I had to cap this fight, I put Dustin Lampros at about a -140 from what I've seen from these guys. But scrappy Dustin Lampros is a guy a lot of people felt it was one of the favorites to win that bantamweight division. And yes, he does put in work over at Sanford MMA. You see it on his Instagram here. I guess he just, he's been over at a top team as well. But again, this guy has been grinding. And, his background, his story, it seems that, he's a guy that he made the move down to South Florida. Actually, after meeting Tyrone Woodley and whatnot up in the Midwest over there. And Woodley kind of helped him come down this way over here in South Florida. And ever since then, he's been down here getting it in. So you see Hani Yaya, one of the more talented grapplers. Don't ever underestimate that. When you see a fighter getting in work with these types of guys, and not just like one or two, but just left and right all over his Instagram, and where he's training. You see here Mirsad Bektik, a guy that I'm extremely high on. Don't underestimate that, or don't undervalue that, because iron sharpens iron. Pedro Munoz, I could imagine the work that he's got in with a lot of these guys here. So besides that, he's been handling business. I know he hasn't defeated a lot of top level talent. He hasn't had those real opportunities as a professional. I think his time will come now, and that's why again I am going to pick Dustin Lampros to win this upcoming episode. We'll see how it plays out. I like Vince Murdock as well. Vince Murdock is a guy, it seems that he has a touching story. They're going to touch upon it in the upcoming episode. Had some type of health issue, could have died or whatnot. Something happened. They did a little sneak preview there. So hopefully this episode will be a better one. And what else? We got fights going down this Saturday, of course. Not the biggest event there. Really, especially coming off this past weekend. That I thought that this past weekend was a solid card, right? A solid pay-per-view. Israel Adesanya retains the title. Nate Diaz almost got that finish the last second of the 5th round there. And there were some exciting fights throughout that card too. So, yeah, kind of a slow week here. If you guys are interested in this upcoming Saturday's breakdown video, it's always up here for you guys. If anyone's interested in reaching out to me, all my contact information's there. Reach out to me for anything, any recommendations for the show, anything you guys want to see. I should have that featherweight divisional breakdown episode coming out to you guys very soon here. I think we're doing the featherweight. I'll glance over the comments again, but I think the majority of them were featherweight. It was either feather or bantamweight. So that will be coming out to you guys very soon here. You guys all enjoy the rest of your week. We're almost to the weekend. Hope you guys all have an amazing weekend. Hope everything's going good with all you guys, man. I appreciate all your support. I see all these comments from you guys. It means a lot to me over here. All right, guys. Signing out. Teller.